Hello, how are you? Back to my normal environment. How are you doing today? How is your Wednesday? It's Wednesday already. Say hi when you're logging in. Let me go ahead and open the phone so that I can see. Yesterday, I could only see some comments, and other times, it's just crazy. Sometimes you see things, sometimes you don't. It's all good. Um, and so Okay, there we go. So now I can see comments, maybe, but it's all good. So say hi when you're logging on. If you're logging on from someplace different, or if you're brand new, tell us where you're logging in from, because I'd love to know. And if you're like out of town, I'd love to know where you are. Tell us. Good morning, Dawn. How are you? So say hi when you're logging on. Engage, 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 engage along the way. If you're watching this in replay, hashtag replay, and going to come back and I'm going to talk back with you. So fantastic. Okay, so we are spending our week talking about self forgiveness and really, really deeply exploring what that means. I am doing well, thank you. My husband's off today. He's worked 5 days straight off today. So when I'm finished here today and I get it uploaded in the non-social media group, I will be done for the day. So I will come back and comment in the later part, but spend some time with my husband. Thank you. Okay, so we were talking about self-forgiveness, and we're really, really digging in depth into that. Yesterday, we talked about the value of self-forgiveness. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about the freedom that comes with self-forgiveness, which they kind of complement each other. And right smack in the middle, we're going to talk about the process, and that's where we are today. So we're not talking about like the concept of it, but the actual act, like actually doing it, all right, and the benefits from doing it. So like I said, that we talked about the benefits, the kind of the value of it yesterday. We'll discuss that a little bit more tomorrow, but today, happy Wednesday, Chris. But today we are going to we're really going to discuss the process, and I want to really take the time to emphasize this, okay? Because I talk about it, I gloss over it, I tell you how to do something, but I really, really want to dig into this deeper, right? Let's be clear on all of this. The work that we talk about doing, that we talk about improving, that we talk about working on, that work is hard work. Like we can brush it off, we can read, we can check and go, oh yeah, I get it, I get it, I get it. You can get it, right? But the application is hard. The intentional doing is hard. It's challenging, often emotional. What's it called? Tiring. Like it's just very tiring, right? Let's be real about how it physically exhausts us to do what we need to do. But the value, like we talked about yesterday, and the freedom that we're going to talk about tomorrow makes the hard work, makes the challenge and life changing, truly, truly life changing. To go from a place where you are struggling just deep inside, like nobody may even know what's going on, but you are struggling deep inside, and to go to a place to have freedom from that, to be able to be like, that no longer plagues me, is so significant. And so it makes this work key, essential, hard, but worth every second of it. Okay, so it's rewarding, it's peace filled, and it really truly brings absolute freedom. And that's tomorrow. But okay, so it's the same method, right? If you've been in my group for a minute, you've heard me talk about the exact method. I use that in anything relation to mindset, is 100% everything that I talk about. You want to have a healthy mindset, you got to practice the exact method. You want to have a healed mindset, you've got to practice the exact method. You want to forgive yourself, you have to practice the exact method. Okay, it's not the only thing we talk about in this group, but boy, when we talk about mindset, it is what we talk about. So every time you see a title with mindset, you know this is coming. Okay, the method's the same, the application is different, varying and depending upon the topic. Okay, so we're going to dig into that, and I'm going to talk about it to forgiving yourself. So we'll come into there. Yes, Chris, totally. Maintaining the application is tough. It's creating a habit. Absolutely. And it is hard, particularly when we talk about stuffers. And if you've not heard the word stuffer before from me, a stuffer is someone who stuffs their feelings. Chris is a stuffer. She's a reformed stuffer. Would that be accurate, Chris? And Chris has shared that in the group before. I am also a reformed stuffer. We should just create a group, Stuffers Anonymous. We are reformed, but right, that doesn't mean it's easy and everything comes natural. What we are talking about, I could tell you this exact method every single day for a year, and as you're applying it, right, you're like, oh, this is different than the last time. Or as you know it and don't apply it, right, when it comes time for application, you're like, oh, yeah, I remember what all this is about. So yeah, so that's what we're going to dig into today, and we are going to, yes, in progress always. So reforming stuffer. Dawn, not a stuffer, not so much. Very good. I'm there with Christ. I'm a reforming. I like that, right? A work in progress, a reforming stuffer. So okay, so let's dig in and let's really talk about how this affects us in our self-forgiveness practice. We talked about the benefits yesterday, and the benefits are the why. Why should we practice this? Which leads us to the benefits. And one of the phrases that I've picked up from someone else about living in a land of stuffers. There's a song in there, Dawn. If I were musical, well, I write songs, parodies, I guess that would be better, but there's a song in there. Anyway, what's it called? As I was talking. So we talked about the why yesterday, the value. One of the phrases I picked up from a business coach that I use, one of the things she says is, when you think about the why, what you really want to think and hear about is so that you can, or so you will be. So when you're really thinking like, why should I practice this self-forgiveness, right? So you can be what? So you can be, free. So you cannot feel guilty. So you can feel healthy in true peace, right? Those are the whys. And you can hear my husband started his car downside of the garage, right? You can hear the car start. But since he's rarely home, generally not a problem. But those are the reasons that we do it. And like usual, I've strayed so far from my notes. But that's when we do it. And so, but there's lots of whys to why we don't do it. So I talked yesterday about the why we should do it, the benefits. We're going to get further into that tomorrow. But here are some of the reasons that we don't do it. Okay? Guilt, right? Sometimes we feel so guilty that we don't want to feel worse. Like we think we're going to feel worse by going through all of this, by doing the hard work to get past it. And you know what? Sometimes we are going to feel worse, but it's for a minute. It's for a minute. And because on the other side of that worse is so much better. It's like, you've got that Band-Aid covering that big bruise on your arm where all your hair is, right? You've got to rip it off. It is going to hurt. But on the other side is healing, right? Because you need fresh air to be part of your healing process on your epidermis, your skin. So that's valuable to understand. Going through the process, yeah, it's hard, but it's hard for a minute, and then it's better. It's better than it was before, so much better. So those are some of the reasons that why we don't practice. Sometimes we are so overwhelmed by the power of the negativity, the feelings of it, that we don't think we can breathe. We don't think we can survive going through a forgiveness process. We can, and it's so much better. So those are some of the reasons that way we avoid going through this. And another thing that's real important to know when we're talking about self-forgiveness, like I spend a lot of time in this exact method, like I talked about in our mindset. I cover this with everything. I mean, this is the answer to our mindset. I'm not even kidding. The exact method is the answer to our mindset issues. But it changes in what it is, right? Most of the time with our mindset, we're really battling through things like that have happened frequently that have happened to us, right? When we're talking about self-forgiveness, we are battling like what we did, or maybe what we didn't do but should have done, right? That's what we're battling to forgive. We're looking at this moment to go through the exact method on our own actions or inactions, Okay, not on the actions of others, which is what so much of mindset is. So that's where we're going to break it down, and that's why, like I said, the, the the method is the same, but what you're applying to is what changes what that method is. How you apply it, that's what changes what that method is. And so let's go ahead and take a minute to get into how to apply this to self-forgiveness. Okay, so the first thing, E, right? Evaluate what you need to forgive yourself for. Like, you need to understand what your actions were, what your words were, what they weren't and they should have been, right? Maybe you had the opportunity to help somebody, right? And you didn't. Well, that's significant, right? And with that comes a tremendous amount of guilt or pain, particularly if maybe something terrible further happened to that individual. Maybe you had an opportunity to help somebody change the path of their life and you didn't, right? You take that guilt on yourself. That's what you need to forgive yourself for. Maybe you did something that hurt somebody, hurt yourself. What's it called? If you were in a relationship, maybe you stepped out of the relationship. Maybe you did something harmful in the relationship. What's it called? If it was a physical action, right? Right this second, my daughter is my oldest daughter. They've had, not in their family, but in a very close familial relationship as a whole family. There was a death from a car accident. So there's a brother and a sister, an older brother and a younger sister, and the younger sister did not survive the accident. This was literally just a couple of days ago. And so right now, the hospital. He didn't do anything wrong. It was a car accident. It was an accident. That's what it was, right? But you and I both know, okay, as he goes forward, he has some battles ahead of himself, right? Of feeling guilt for that car accident, though we know he shouldn't. We know he will because we're human, right? There was nothing he could do to save his sister, but he's going to battle that feeling that there was something done. That's the guilt that's innate in us for something that we shouldn't have done. Or he's going to feel guilty because he was the driver of the vehicle, right? So therefore it must be his fault, right? So those are actions. It was a car accident, okay? But this is what he's going to have to battle. We have that in so many aspects throughout all our lives. Now, here's the truth of the matter, right? There was no intention behind that accident, right? It was a car accident. It was a horrible accident, but there was no intention behind that. But there are things that we have done that have had intention. We have to know exactly. Thank you. Yeah, this is, yes, they did. This was a terrible situation. An 18-year-old girl who loved God, who had her whole world. She was in Bible school, had her whole world ahead of her, but she is healed and perfectly worshiping God right now, right? And the family rejoices in that and mourns at the same time. But so taking this factor, right, in that we have to understand, we have to fully evaluate and understand what it is that we're fighting that we need to forgive ourselves for. What is it? Like, what happened or didn't happen? What's our perception of it? Because let me tell you, perception is so much of it. Okay. Sometimes legit, there are things we have to forgive ourselves for. Sometimes there's a perception that is not what really happened, and we have to work through that. So for example, this young man, he has a perception of what he should or shouldn't have done, right? That's what he'll have to contend with and deal with, as opposed to if we had done something with intention. Okay, so you have to evaluate, and you have to truly, truly know what it is that you are working on, okay? And the next thing is you have to recognize, what are you feeling? Like, what are you feeling in relation to this? Guilty, scared, heartbroken, confused, angry, or what are you feeling in connected to this this thing that you have to forgive yourself for? So it may be a particular action. Like I've said that. You're going to find myself repeating myself. I'm old. Go with it. I'm not old. I'm just joking. But that's the truth of it now, right? There may be some particular action. There may be a perception of an action, but you've got feelings that are connected to it. I had a very hard time One of the things that I really had to grow through in my mindset, right? I've talked about having to deal with the words of parents, right? But I have two younger sisters. We grew up in an abusive situation, and the abuse, physical and sexual, never reached my sisters, but the verbal and emotional abuse was all over the place. And each parent had a favorite. Two parents, three kids. My mother favored my middle sister. My dad kind of more favored my youngest sister, and so they did not speak so much to that child, but they spoke to about the other two children, whichever one they were. And and so as we were going through this, right, I had a lot of guilt for not protecting my sisters, right? That weighed on me because I was older. I was older of them by 4 or 5 years. And so that really weighed on me. And I had a lot to forgive myself for. Was it perception? Absolutely. What could I really have done as an 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old child, right? There's not a whole lot I could have done. There was a perception that I had to forgive myself for, but it was important to do it. Even though I had nothing to feel guilty for, I felt that guilt and I had to work through that. So it's not just self-forgiveness for an actual act with intention. There's self-forgiveness for perception as well, and that's important and key to healing and being able to move forward. But you've got to understand all of your feelings connected to that. For me, that was guilt. That was total guilt for feeling that, and that's what I had to work through. There were things that I have done hurtful in relationships, right? Who hasn't? Nothing that was abusive per se, but it was hurtful in a relationship. And you have to work through those things. Like to me, there was a friend in high school. She was a couple of years younger than I am. And I made the mistake one time of calling her like a little sister instead of a friend. That hurt her. Excuse me, sorry. That hurt her and honestly irreparably damaged the relationship because she was so hurt by that. To me, I didn't see the big deal about that at all. But as an adult, I grew to understand how even if I didn't understand it, it still was a hurtful action, and having to work through that and acknowledge, like I never even acknowledged that she was hurt. I was like, you're being stupid. Like you're being ridiculous. We're friends, whatever. You know what I mean? I never acknowledged that. And so I had to go back and I really had to connect my feelings. So yes, I was indifferent to the act, but the other person wasn't. And so there were some things in there, and I had to recognize where I was wrong. And were my words wrong? Looking back, I don't think the words were wrong. I think the intent might have been misplaced, but I think my careless attitude afterwards is what was wrong, right? So there are things to work through and really understand. You have to know, you have to realize what good came from the circumstances. Good comes from every circumstance. It might be hard to see sometimes, but good comes from every circumstance. What good came from the circumstances that you have to forgive yourself for? What did you learn? Or what did someone else learn? You need to find that and identify that. It's absolutely key, because if you can't find the good, you're never going to see past the problem. So you can figure out what the problem is, you could recognize the emotions, but if you can't come to acknowledging the good that has come out of the situation, you're going to be stuck there. You're not going to be able to move forward until you can find that good. So in regards to my sisters, right? Did I do something to protect them from the abuses at that point? No, but I eventually spoke up. So I know good came from that, and I know that they were protected, and where they are in their lives now are as a result of the choices that they've made, not because of the choices that were made to them. In the friend that I hurt, right? What good came from it? Well, honestly, she went along. I was leaving high school. There was a 3-year age difference, so she had 3 years of high school ahead of her. So I went away out of the picture when she kind of cut me out, but she went along and she made good friends that are lifelong friends now. And so you weigh that process, right? There was good that came out of that. You have to acknowledge that, and you have to recognize that. She may not have gone off and met other people, right? She may have just clung to that. That doesn't mean I did something good or I made the situation it was so much better because of that, right? It's not taking on a personal goodness out of it. It's recognizing that there is just goodness in every situation because of God. What can you learn? Okay, so here comes the crazy part, right? As we talked about this, and like I said, this exact method so many times over, you need to converse with yourself. And I'm not kidding when I say you need to have an out loud conversation with yourself where you forgive yourself. And here's why. We are people who do not like to ask for forgiveness. It's kind of an admitting that there might have been a wrong, right? And so we, as a practice, as a habit, we don't verbalize this very often. We may be very quick to be like, oh, I'm sorry. But really meaning that I'm sorry is a little bit different, right? Or you may be like, I often say, someone comes in and they've had a bad day or, something like that. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, honey, I had a really bad day. Even though I had nothing to do with the day, right? I'm quick to say that. And I'm sorry that they had a bad day. But it's a difference than forgiveness. When we're talking about true forgiveness, we are not as quick to say, I'm sorry to others. Well, if we're not as quick to say it to others, we're even slower to say it to ourselves. You have to have these conversations and you have to have them out loud. Okay? That's the only way to expel this from you, is to actually speak it out loud. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. You have to have these conversations out loud. You have to forgive yourself verbally. Okay, not just mentally, because we're real quick to have many jumbled thoughts. You actually need to verbalize that. So when I say converse with yourself, I mean converse with yourself. Go into your car, lock yourself in the car, right? Because where are you most likely going to be alone? The bathroom or the car, right? Go into the car, go into the bathroom, whatever it is, close the world out and have this conversation with yourself. Man, this is what I did. I recognize that this is what I did. Go through these steps, get to the conversation, and then, release yourself. I forgive you for these actions. I forgive you for what happened. I forgive you for what you did. Okay? And move forward. That's an essential key part. And if, like I said, each one of these steps is important, but if you get stuck up on the acknowledging what the good is, you're really going to get stuck up with the conversing, and you're going to spend time, you've got to finish this process. You've got to finish the process to come to complete healing. So after you have verbally, you've had conversation with yourself, you've verbally forgiven yourself, you have to have tactical combat, spiritual warfare all the time. Satan is alive, and these issues, they pop back up. We think, oh, it's all done, it's all over, I'm through this. And yes, there's truth to that, but things always pop back up. Okay, and I'm going to use the example, how many times in the Bible can you read Israel followed God, Israel failed God, Israel followed God, Israel failed God? That's the entire Old Testament, right? So, and we're the same way, right? These things, life just continues to come back. The same things we do, we are good for a season, and then we're for a season, right? So these issues continue to come up through others, somebody else may bring it up, intentionally or unintentionally, innocently or not so innocent, through events, an event may trigger, oh, yeah. And so feelings come back. You have to make a plan to remind yourself, nope, this is a dead issue. I've already dealt with this and I don't have to go back through it again. Done and dealt with. But you have to remind yourself that, because if not, we get caught in this trap. We get caught in that little hamster wheel, spinning around and around and around. You have to remind yourself, no, I have already dealt with this, and move on. But if you skipped any of these steps, right, dealt with it. And that's why it's important to understand that. You have to know exactly what you're forgiving yourself for. You have to recognize all the feelings that have gone along with it. You have to look for the good, because the good is there. You have to verbally forgive yourself. And it's a lot easier to verbally forgive yourself when you've recognized that there's some good, right? It's a lot easier to do that. And then you've got to be prepared. Somewhere, somehow, some way, this is going to worm its way right back into your brain. And you've got to remind yourself, nope, I have already dealt with this. And you'll know if you haven't, because you will not be able to remind yourself of that. Okay, so that is the process of self-forgiveness, okay? It's the exact method. You have to go through it. This is where healing is. This is absolutely where healing is. And some of you have been in this group now for 9, 10 months. All right. Throw in the comments that you know that you've practiced this, that you've tried this, that it has worked. Because others who are newer to the group, they need to know I'm not crazy. They need to know really what you've experienced and how you've experienced. I have worked through this in my life. This is how I created this, is actually through working through this process. And in so many ways, when I talk about it in mindset, it's because I've been there. I've done it in some fashion or another. I've had to work through all those words that come from abusive parents. I've had through failed relationships in various capacities, friendships and otherwise. I've been married to the same person my whole life, but I mean, one person my whole life. So it's not been a failed marriage, but that's not to say we haven't had failed moments in our marriage, right? So I've had to work through all of this, and I've had to forgive myself for things that I have done, for thoughts that I have had, for things I haven't done when I should have done it. And most of the time, that's really a lot between God and I. Right? Others don't even know it exists. And I have to work through that with God. But I have to go through this method, right? I keep this right beside my computer, and I work through this as often as I need to. As often as I need to. It is visibly in front of me to remind me of the steps, because it's really easy to skip one, but it's there because it works. All right. So tomorrow we're going to talk about the freedom that comes with self-forgiveness. It's going to kind of go back and talk about, explore some of those values we talked about the other day. But I really want to challenge you. I want to challenge you. Don't go looking for trouble where trouble doesn't exist. If you are in a healed state and you can look back and you be like, there's nothing I need to forgive myself with, don't create something. All right. This is not time to just manifest stuff. And I'm not into that, right? But if you've got stuff inside of you, if you've got stuff that you have not worked through, if you know you have things, actions or intentions or non-actions that you need to forgive yourself for, I really want to challenge you to dig in and do this and practice this. And then I want you to tell me how you feel afterwards. Like what happened that changed in you after you practice this. Totally key. So, okay, so tomorrow we're going to talk about the freedom that comes with this. I hope you have an absolutely fantastic Wednesday. Like I said, I'm going to take the rest of the day, as soon as I get this uploaded in the other area, I'm going to take the day off and spend it with my husband. And I look forward to talking to you guys tomorrow. So have a fantastic Wednesday.